if I got this right. Hey, look at that fade. I just figured that out. I mean, I can do it in post, but I got that fade live. Damn. Good morning. It's Monday. I hope you had a happy, safe weekend, and welcome back. It's time to get ready for work, right? Okay. So, the title today is Preaching to the Choir. I'm going to touch on a couple of stories, a couple of headlines that you've seen, stuff about cuties, stuff about BLM blocking emergency rooms. I'm going to touch on a couple of those things eventually. But there's something in particular I want to talk about. I touched on this subject probably a week or two ago. I know I mentioned it and just kind of touched on it, but I didn't really dig into it. But let's talk about social media. Let's talk about social media and the political bubbles. So, damn, I did not mean to go that quiet for that long. And I'm going to try to leave. I'm going to try to be careful about dropping the F-bombs. As I'm just going to try to not in this particular episode, because I really want you to share this one. It's important to share this episode because no matter how much we talk about these particular news items today, people need to be getting their news. Not from me. Not necessarily from me. I will read. I'm not producing news. I'm producing analysis and I'm producing opinion content. This is editorial content. Now, as a rule, I try to begin by extracting the objective facts of a case and then offering an editorial analysis. And that's difficult to do because more often than not, news is... There are no journalists now. And I'm too old and tired to start a career as an investigative journalist. Apart from... There are some very specific cases that I would be willing to apply my, shall we say, special skill sets to. But apart from that, reading the news is not an easy thing now, and it should be. But it never has been. The idea that the takeover of the media by radical leftists is a recent phenomenon is just ludicrous. The fact of the matter is that basically right up until there was a Rush Limbaugh and a Fox News, there wasn't an alternative. So you were still getting highly editorialized propaganda instead of objective journalism, even as far back as the Great Depression. Really, as far back as there have been journalists, as far back as there have been newspapers, you've been served opinion and editorial and propaganda rather than objective journalism. Objective journalism is a myth. There's just no such thing. There are a few journalists, independent journalists, that are not employed by cartel media outlets they do the best they can at remaining objective. But the fact of the matter is, as a human being, you are blind to so much around you because you must be. You have to be. You don't see everything that's in front of you. You can't afford to. You don't have time for it. And I don't mean that I don't even mean that you're very, very busy. I mean the amount of time required for you to observe and understand everything which is placed in front of your eyes to be observed is not an amount of time which exists. It's that simple. You must be blind to a lot. Now, that said, that's the reason that all journalism is necessarily editorialized. It's not purely objective. But there is such a thing as more objective. There is such a thing as less biased. And it's very difficult to identify that. So, last week, we were talking about the story of Trump being awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, or being nominated. So he's been nominated again, by the way. That means that Donald Trump has been nominated 3 times for the Nobel Peace Prize in total, because he's got one from a few years ago, and then 2 he was nominated twice last week, which, say what you like, Alex, that is actually a big deal. Jeremiah Johnson's in the chat. Good morning, Jeremiah. Cameron is, well, he's heading out to kill some bugs this morning. Cameron's a busy boy. We're hoping we can get him back on track as the weather cools down and the bugs back off. Probably start seeing a little more of him beginning of next month. So, the echo chamber. First, let me say, I encourage everyone to keep all your friends, even the people you haven't met. Don't unfriend people, no matter how offensive they are. On Facebook, Twitter, wherever you follow people, no matter how offensive they are, unless their rhetoric is starting to interfere with your other relationships legitimately, keep everybody around on social media. It's worthwhile to understand what the enemy thinks. For one, it helps you avoid your echo chamber. It is indeed possible, although usually improbable, for someone on the other side of this political quandary to know something you don't. And it's highly possible for them to know something that you don't, for them to have encountered a piece of evidence which has not been contextualized for them because they have evaded other evidence, but it is a piece of evidence which you were not yet aware of, which contextualized with the broader body of evidence that you may have is actually useful. Or it may even be that on occasion, you're not right. Sometimes you can learn something from other people. Jordan Peterson often talks about how you should always approach every conversation under the assumption that the other person knows something you don't, and you can learn from that. And I agree with that 100%. Now, it's much more complex than saying that the other person might know something that can improve you on its own. It may not be that another person has a piece of information which is itself going to make you a better person, but they might have a piece of information which itself can help you understand how they have come to be mistaken. So I'm not willing to concede such ground as to say that on the other side of the argument, and okay, so back up. What is the other side of the argument? What we're really talking about right now with the echo chambers and the epistemic bubble is being on whatever social media you're on, watching the news, and you get put through filters. And there's a few filters here. There's your original cognitive bias. There are certain things which you agree with, you will find easier to believe. That is involuntary. If you already have a set of beliefs and something agrees with those beliefs, you will have an involuntary cognitive bias towards those beliefs. That's something. Once you know that, once you understand that, it will be easier for you to back up for a moment and ask yourself, and the phrase "check your bias." I hate it when I hear people say "check your bias," because 9 times out of 10 they have no idea what they're talking about. 9 times out of 10, what they mean when they say "check your bias" is you believe what you believe because you're a racist. Well, maybe I believe that if Burger King puts out a new burger, there's a good chance that I will enjoy it because I like burgers and Burger King specializes in them. Right? That's a bias. I know that Burger King makes burgers. I like some Burger King burgers. If Burger King makes a new burger, I have a cognitive bias to expect that burger to be delicious. I also have a cognitive bias that burger will be at least relatively unhealthy because it's fast food. But check your bias. What about the Impossible Burger? Turns out, maybe healthier than regular burgers. Also garbage. But I wouldn't know that if I hadn't tried it. See what I did there? I haven't tried it, so I don't know if it sucks. It's a vegan burger, so I expect that it sucks. That's also a cognitive bias. But I also said I wouldn't know if I hadn't tried it. I did not, however, say that I do know, or that I did know. I didn't claim to have the knowledge. But, just like a media that's willing to tell you that Donald Trump did not have sprinkles on his ice cream when what was actually reported is that he was eating ice cream and sprinkles were never mentioned. By saying I wouldn't know if I hadn't tried it, I let you make an assumption, which is an untrue assumption, and I let you sit with it, but I never lied. And that's one of the ways that this media monstrosity continues to perpetuate the false narratives. Now, you remain tied up in a false narrative when you remain stuck in a bubble. We have seen from several studies this year, we've learned that the echo chamber on the left is far more dangerous and destructive than the echo chamber on the right. And that is because, by contrast, there almost isn't an echo chamber on the right. Now, it would be disingenuous to say that there isn't an echo chamber on the right. The way the echo chambers form, you have your cognitive bias. You're probably going to believe things that you already agree with. If you see a piece of news which makes a claim that is damaging to your side of the opinion scale, then you are more likely to reject it out of hand without seeking further evidence. Except that it turns out that because of the way the two sides' echo chambers work, if you're on the right, you're much more likely to, rather than reject it out of hand, like, for example, the recent claim that Donald Trump called troops losers and suckers. Well, we said, okay, probably not. You want to bring some receipts with that? Well, we've got unnamed sources. Huh. Well, here's like 30 named sources, people who are willing to go on record, some of whom, like John Bolton, don't like Donald Trump and would probably really like for this to be true and would like for it to be proved because, I mean, anything they can do to hurt the guy, they're all about. And they're coming out on record, putting their name on it. He never said it. Right? So, it turns out that on the left, people tend to stay in the echo chamber and consume exclusively far left-wing media. Now, let me be very clear on the left-right dichotomy. Not too clear. I don't want to go too far down this road. I think I want to make a separate video just about this idea. But the Democrats, CNN, the left, the DNC, the whole mainstream media apparatus, and Joe Biden's campaign, Democrats at large, they would have you believe that the definition of far right is anyone who is to the right of Mao. Honestly, the truth of the matter is, anyone who is to the left of Tim Pool is a domestic terrorist. Tim Pool is basically the dividing line. Like, you got Tim Pool is the left, is the moderate left, and then you've got Steven Crowder is the moderate right, and everything to the left of Tim Pool are domestic terrorists, and everything to the right of Steven Crowder are reasonable thinking, freedom-loving Americans until you get to what is actually far right, and that would be anarcho-capitalists. I lived somewhere over here before the anarcho part. And don't get me wrong, I love Tim Pool and Steven Crowder and Ben Shapiro and all those adorable, squishy milquetoast fence sitters. They're fantastic for objective journalism because they are so very middle of the road, moderate. Tim Pool's a little to the left of dead moderate. Steven Crowder, Ben Shapiro, a little to the right of dead moderate. But people get stuck in these echo chambers. For one, if you're on the left, you can live your life consuming exclusively radical left-wing media like CNN and Disney and Hollywood-produced films and whatever won the awards at the Cannes this year. I'm talking to you, cuties. I'm talking to you. You know, your child porn, your ultra racist pieces. You know, your ultra racist pieces like that. What was that movie about the black women that landed us on the moon? Hidden Figures. I go a whole diatribe on that garbage. And honestly, I heard it was a pretty decent movie, but I refused to see it based exclusively on the marketing campaign. Nobody ever talks about these women of color that achieve so much. Other than Neil Armstrong, and for most people can't even name Buzz Aldrin. And of those who know who Buzz Aldrin is, most of them didn't know who he was until some nut job walked up and said, "You never landed on the moon, you're a liar," and Buzz knocked him out. But for real, other than Neil Armstrong, and maybe if you're a little bit more informed, Buzz Aldrin, name me one other white man that worked on the project to put them on the moon. Right, the point being, the four black female mathematicians that worked on the NASA project that got us to the moon, I'm not saying that they didn't accomplish anything, but the claim was not these women made great accomplishments. The claim was it's important to tell these stories because people refuse to tell their story precisely because they're black women. No, and that's an absolute lie. It's not that they were black women. It's that they were not the face of the program. There were thousands of people involved in that program, many of whom were, it wasn't a segregated program, right? The moon landing was a post-segregation activity. There were black women, there were Asian men, there were white, whatever. Every stripe, right? Maybe not so much the gay. But other than that, it was not like it's not like it was a segregated program and it was just magical that these four women ended up. They were there, they did a good job, and then nobody ever talked about them again. In exactly the same way, nobody ever talked about anybody on that project unless you are someone who is deeply ingrained in the study of the history of it, someone who has taken it on as a passion project to make a documentary about it. You're a person who is in one of those fields. You're in some level of mathematics or astrophysics or rocket engineering, something like that, and you've studied the work of the people who were... If you're just Joe Citizen, you know Neil Armstrong's name because he put his foot on the moon and said one great step for man. Damn, I can't believe I've forgotten the quote. Too much other stuff going on. You know the thing. But so much of that media is exactly that. Oh, these women are super. These women, nobody's going to tell their story because they're black. No, nobody's going to tell their story because there's too many damn stories to tell. And this woman's story is she did math. It's hard to sell it. And in fact, that's exactly the reason why you have to make up some bullcrap about the racism. Small step for man, giant leap for mankind. Son of a bitch. Thank you, Krista. But she did math good. That story's hard to sell. You want to tell a bunch of people she did math good? That's awesome, but nobody cares to hear it. No, the average citizen is not particularly interested. But you wrap it up in some social justice bandages and send out that cursed mummy and say, you need to know this woman did math because she was black. And the only reason you don't know she did math is because she was black. And if that's the claim that you're going to try to sell me, you're a liar, and I'm not interested in anything else you have to say. If you have to begin by lying to me, then there's no business that we can conduct honestly together. So if you have to open with a lie, I can't work with you. Yeah, but, you know, Krista says she did math good and was heavily recruited by the Air Force and nobody cares. Somebody cared, Krista. They tried to recruit you. But, you know, Chair Force, you know, the Chair Force used to be the last rung on the military respect ladder before the Coast Guard, and then that one coastie jumped on the submarine and knocked. Pardon our host, his RAM is highly taxed. Steve is not wrong about that. So, on the right, people tend to consume both sides of media. Now, that's an inevitability in the current market. Because if you're on the right and you would prefer to consume conservative media, you would prefer to consume Crowder's show for news and commentary and comedy. You would prefer to go for Stefan Molyneux for the Truth About series and get kind of a balanced historic perspective. Then you're going to seek those out. But if you seek those out and you try hard to only consume that kind of media as a conservative, you're still going to be subjected involuntarily to CNN every time you're in an airport or a dentist office or whatever, VA, anything like that. You're going to be forced to consume the left-wing propaganda media. If you're on the left, all of your media, it's much easier to avoid right-wing media. So they like to talk about Fox News. Most of those left-wing media consumers, they believe that if you have an opinion that doesn't include abolish the police, dissolve the borders, and kill the babies, if you don't want to do those three things, it's because you're an extreme right-wing nut job that only watches Fox News, because Fox News is an extreme right-wing propaganda platform. Guys, go watch you some Fox News. I dare you. I don't watch a lot of Fox News anymore. Not passively anyway. I will seek out Fox News articles on particular stories, like we talked about the Nobel Peace Prize article last week. The Fox News article on it, the headline was just straight up: Donald Trump nominated for Nobel Peace Prize by a Swedish politician. Right? Just that's an objective. That's as close as you're ever going to get to a perfectly objective headline. That's just a set of facts. Donald Trump is a person. He was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. It was done by a Swedish politician. Or Swiss politician, whatever. An MP, a member of parliament over there. Every other headline from every other newspaper was something like, far-right white nationalist, right-wing extremist European politician nominates, ludicrously nominates Donald Trump for the Peace Prize. And then a lot of them had another little tale, reminding us that the Peace Prize isn't a legitimate award anyway. Oh, really? Is that what you were saying when Barack Obama got it 11 minutes after he failed to do anything as the president? So the echo chamber is much tighter on the left. And that has led to a lot of the violence that we're seeing now, a lot of the riots, a lot of the problems generally, is that on the left, they think that you're all Alex Jones. And they think that Alex Jones is the most extreme right. And they're wrong on both counts. Most of us, Alex Jones gets a lot of stuff right in a weird way. And really what happens is he's got good, legitimate sources, well-sourced facts. And then he tends to embellish dramatically. He tends to embellish. He doesn't tend to embellish the facts. He tends to embellish the reasonable conclusions that can be drawn from an analysis of the fact patterns. And then on top of that, he's an especially blustery presenter. So he's bombastic, he's emotional, he cries, he laughs, he shouts, he curses, he screams. He is definitely at some level an entertainer. I would even go so far as to call him a clown. And I mean a clown in the sense of a professional presenter. I suppose court jester. Right? The court jester doesn't have to be a ridiculous thing, but somebody who presents on that level is beneath the contempt of the court, and that's why the jester is the only one who's allowed to criticize the king, especially in front of the king. So Alex Jones is a court jester in that kind of way. And Alex Jones is not the far right. Now, he is further right, granted, than the milquetoast conservatives like Crowder and Shapiro. But he's not an anarchist. And that's what the far right is. That's where you get into anarchy. The idea that fascism is the far right, that's absurd. I'm not gonna dig too deep into I'm not gonna dig into the Overton window stuff right now, but fascism is on the left. Just because the Nazis and the fascists didn't get along doesn't mean that they were politically oppositive. The Nazis, the fascists, the communists, the Russian communists, the Italian fascists, all those guys, they're all Marxists. I mean, they're all the brainchildren of Karl Marx. Where, okay, so basically here's what happened. Friedrich Nietzsche said there's a master mentality and a servant morality. There's a wolf and a sheep. The wolf has virtues that include strength, leadership, family, community, the pack, right? Providing for the pack, hunting to survive, to live, right? And then the sheep, well, the sheep look at the wolf and they say, everything that they think is good must be bad. Everything that the wolf thinks is virtuous, strength, resilience, reliance, loyalty, the pack, hunting, everything that the wolf thinks is good must necessarily be bad. And so the virtue of the sheep, the virtue of the servant, the virtue of the sheep is victimhood, meekness, weakness. They just take the attributes that they have and presume those to be virtues. And Karl Marx looked at what Nietzsche said and said, "You're right, rich people are evil." And Nietzsche rolled over in his grave and said, "Oh, Karl, you stupid drunk. You've completely missed the point." And a big part of where Karl missed the point there is that Nietzsche began that whole line of philosophy with this idea that the individual can create his own morality. You can choose what is virtuous. Now, I disagree with that. I disagree with the idea of the individual defining his own morality exclusively. I don't dismiss it out of hand, but if nothing else, the Nuremberg trials gave us a pretty good indication that there is universal morality. We held the Nuremberg trials and we said, this thing is evil. This thing that you did, this Holocaust thing, that is evil, and nobody should ever do that again. The whole world condemns exactly this. Not to put too fine a point of it, but any person who argues moral relativism is arguing that Hitler was justified in everything he did, precisely because it was morally good in his philosophy. So please, oh please, argue your moral relativism. And I'll put that up against the Nuremberg trials any day of the week. Good luck. So the result of all that is you have these echo chambers in which the left believes, and I really had not intended for this show to just be me talking at you. I had some articles pulled up, and I thought we might talk about those, but whatever. We're just going to do this for a while. It's been over half an hour. I might be about done with you anyway. So, within the echo chamber, you're preaching to the choir. On the left, because they're so locked into their echo chamber, preaching to the choir is not especially valuable. It's not especially useful. On the right, however, there's good reason to preach to the choir. It is not, but see, on the left, like we've already covered, they're much more stuck in that echo chamber. On the right, because you cannot evade the leftist propaganda machines reliably, because You will be made to care, as Eric Erickson likes to say. But basically, the propaganda is you're going to be exposed to the propaganda no matter what your wishes are, against your will. That means that information, because even misinformation is information, and if it's correctly identified and dissected, it's still valuable, because misinformation contains information which tells us about the objectives of the perpetrators of the misinformation. That's valuable. So that information leaks into our echo chamber, which is a much, much larger chamber. Our echo chamber includes, well, we actually read the article that CNN put out that the lefties are quoting, and there's a lot of hokum there to debunk. So when we're having conversations like this, and everybody that's likely to listen to my show is hearing me say things that they largely agree with, it is my top level opinion that you hear and probably agree with. The deeper level of analysis, where we talk about how Marxism is basically a bastardized plagiarization of Nietzsche, and Marx took Nietzsche and just took a small piece of it and then got it entirely wrong. That's how you get Marxism. Understanding that, getting that piece of the analysis and adding that to your toolkit, that's why it's useful to preach to the choir. If we stop having conversations with each other, oh, Steve's trying to correct me on my claim about both sides. Okay, Steve says both sides listen to supporting info. Both sides believe they're correct. I see. So, Steve, what has happened here is you missed the beginning of the show. I'm not playing semantics at all here. So, oh. Nope, I'm not going to deal with any more comments from Steve. You've missed a very important piece of context. So, you'll have to go back and watch the rest of it. Anyway. Damn, you got me off track. Steve made me forget what I was saying. I know I was talking about echo chambers. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and put a pin in it right here. I'm going to go back and watch this episode again, and I'm going to use it to develop a more produced version of this topic, a more produced treatment of this subject matter. I think that's just what I'll do with the rest of my day. So, thanks for watching. I will see you tomorrow. Be safe out there. It's time to go to work. And also, Steve, this is your fault.